My beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today I'm doing another video in my BYOP with me series. A little over a month ago I did a video where I used my single shadows to sort of dupe, sort of recreate the vibe of a few new palettes at Sephora, and in the comments of that video I got several requests for other palettes that you wanted to see in this format. So I'm gonna just take some of your requests. Some of the palettes that you asked for are ones that I actually own, so that will make the process a little bit easier. And then some I'll just be using the online swatches that I can pull up on Sephora, Google, wherever, and we'll just do our best. The whole point of this series isn't for you to go out and buy a bunch of new single eyeshadows. I'm probably even going to end up using some shadows that are no longer available. More so, the idea is just to inspire you to use what you already have. Even if you don't have a large single eyeshadow collection, look at the shadows that are in your existing palettes, or even things like face products, blushes, bronzers, highlighters. Those may be similar to some of the shadows that are catching your eye in some of these other palettes too. So it's really just meant to be a fun way to play with the makeup that we already have and enjoy creating some new inspiring color stories, hopefully inspiring. So let's go build some palettes that you wanted to see. The first palette that I'm going to recreate today is this Mercury Retrograde palette from Huda Beauty. This has been and remains one of my favorite palettes in my collection. It is well loved, well used, as you can see from the close-up here, and I do think this is probably the best Huda Beauty palette ever. So I've had a lot of requests to dupe this one and recreate it over the years, and I am finally getting around to it in this video. For this particular recreation, I am going to end up using all ColourPop shadows, but throughout this video you'll see a couple other brands popping up as well. I don't intentionally try to include or exclude any certain brands. It's just sort of going with which colors I have that fit the colors in the palette I'm trying to recreate. I actually find that it's easier to recreate more colorful palettes than it is to recreate more neutral palettes, because the different finishes and undertones need to be a lot more exact when you're recreating a palette that has a lot of very similar shades. Whereas with a palette like this, the Mercury Retrograde, there are quite a lot of different shades and finishes. So as long as you get pretty close, the overall effect ends up being pretty similar. And you definitely will see that phenomenon with the other palettes because they are more overall neutral than this Retrograde palette. So this is by far the best recreation of the three, the closest as far as duping goes. Maybe it's because of this many different colors, many different finishes phenomenon. Maybe it's because it's the only one that I actually have in hand. And it is a lot harder to dupe off of pictures and very, very edited swatch photos. I know I've been breezing through these singles pretty quickly as we go through this video. I am going to show you an overall shot of the finished dupe palette, air quotes around dupe palette. That way you can just pause here and either take a screenshot or write down the shades that you're interested in if you want to get a full picture of what shades I put into my recreation palettes. And now I'm going to show you the swatches of the actual Huda Mercury Retrograde next to my recreations. I feel like this is really close. Some of the sparkly shades look a little bit different as far as the reflectiveness goes. The Huda ones are very glittery, very sparkly, and some of my recreation shades are just a little bit more overall metallic and just have that smooth metallic finish instead of being really sparkly. but color-wise, I feel like they are so, so close. You could definitely do 2 of the same eye look, 1 on each eye, using each one of these palettes, and I don't think anybody would ever know the difference. And full disclosure, this is by far the best, closest match I get in this entire video. Like I said, I don't have the other 2 palettes that I'm going to recreate, so I sort of ended up making my version really more my ideal version. Like, I do make a couple of tweaks to the palettes, partially just because my singles collection is limited to what I have on hand, and partially because I just sort of wanted to make the palettes into what I wanted them to be. So next up is another very, very requested palette from my last BYOP video, and that's the Nouveau palette from ABH, Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is their latest release, and I really am sad that we don't have the palette packaging color anywhere in this palette. They do describe one of the shades as a matte muted hunter green, but even in the pan and definitely in the swatches, it just looks like a brown. So this is a very overwhelmingly neutral palette. We do have a little orangey coral pop here. We do have this lavender color, but overall, this is a pretty basic neutral palette. And I just love this super neutral, cool toned green packaging. I wish that that was somewhere in the actual palette, but alas, it's not. And I don't even have a single like that. When it comes to the process of actually selecting these shades, I have many, many other build your own palette videos where I go through that process, give you my thoughts, show you the swatches and how I'm selecting shades and my reasoning. When I do just one single palette in a video, I like to go through that process of selecting the shades and showing you why I chose what I chose. And when I do videos like this one where I'm doing multiple palette recreations, I can't really go through that process. As you can see, this video is already well over 15 minutes long, just showing you the shades and the resulting swatches. So if I showed you the actual process, this video would be like an hour long. I know in theory that sounds like fun, or that sounds like something you would want to watch, but I can tell you I have many, many years of YouTube analytics telling me that is not the type of thing that would perform well on my channel or really be worth the many hours of filming and editing it would take to make that type of video. But I do have a lot of different videos where I take you through that process for other palettes. So if that's something you're interested in, I definitely have that available on my channel. Check out my BYOP playlist and you will see lots of other palette recreations as well as me building my own palettes from my own different inspirations. And I am just really interested in this whole process and showing you lots of different palettes, lots of different ideas, and you can see my creation process along the way with many, many other palettes. Now, these are the swatches that I came up with. I'm not entirely thrilled with how this one turned out when it comes to actually comparing it to the swatches that I found for the Nouveau palette, but I do kind of like mine better. So in that way, I am thrilled with how this palette turned out. I just think that mine has a little bit more variety and it's very true to the original inspo. It just has a little bit more variation where I think a lot of these shades come off looking kind of one note. No offense to ABH. The palette looks really beautiful, just their swatches, a lot of the shades look a little bit too similar for me. So I did switch up just a little bit some of the shades and finishes to keep that same feeling, but to give it a little bit more variety just to suit my preference. I mean, I'm making the palette, so I can make it however I want. And if you recreate a palette, you can tweak it to make it whatever you want. Also, literally any excuse to use this Terra Moon's duochrome shade because it is 1 million billion times more interesting to me than the ABH shade. The last palette for today's video is the Retro palette from Natasha Denona. This is one I've been meaning to do a recreation of for a really long time. This is a wildly popular eyeshadow palette, and I definitely know I have these shades for sure in my singles collection and probably in several other palettes too, but I am just going to go with my singles. I know I'm going to be able to do a great recreation of this. And I think this palette is popular for a reason. It looks like a really nice variety of light, medium, and deep shades, a nice mix of textures. There's just enough color. It's still not going to be overwhelming or intimidating for most people, but it's also not just your average orangey, warm, neutral palette. So I definitely get why so many people love this palette and why it would be a bestseller. I am going to do my best to dupe all 15 shades in this palette. However, if I was doing my own version of this, I think I could easily edit this down to a 12 pan palette. There are quite a few shades in here, particularly these really light mattes that I think get to be quite redundant. And even if you can tell a difference in the swatch, I don't think there's going to be that much of a difference on the actual eyelid. When it comes down to it, I think that this palette could be edited down pretty easily, but I'm not doing that today. I'm just doing my best to match the swatches and the photos that I found online. As I was going through choosing these shades, I kept thinking about the ColourPop holiday release from a couple years ago. The Menage a Moi palette has a very, very similar color story to this retro palette. I don't have the Natasha Denona retro palette, obviously, but I have a feeling that that one is pretty similar as well. So if you are going to do a recreation of this retro palette yourself and you have that Menage a Moi palette, I would definitely look into using some of those shades, especially if you don't have a super extensive singles collection. I think that could be a useful option for you as well. Now I'm going to show you all the shade names once again. If you want to pause or do a screenshot, write down the names, whatever works best for you. If you just look at the eyeshadow pans here side by side with a photo of the retro palette, I don't think this looks very close. I think mine looks quite a bit lighter than the photos that they have, which obviously their website photos are super edited anyway, as are all website photos. But when you look at the swatches, when I put these swatches side by side, I think that it looks pretty darn close. Obviously, I can't say it's a perfect match because I don't have it myself, and you can tell this is a highly edited photo, but I think that the swatches look pretty darn similar, and I do think that the eye looks would be really, really close as well. And when it comes down to recreating a palette, that's kind of the whole point, at least in my mind, is to be able to get the same looks out of it. I really like taking your suggestions on these palettes because I want to do recreations that are useful for you. So make sure you keep leaving me your suggestions and I will keep building the palettes that you want to see recreated. I always have so much fun with these videos. I love just digging into my single shadows. I love an excuse to just swatch a whole bunch of colors. I always enjoy making these and I always love hearing your suggestions too. So make sure you leave a comment telling me which palettes you want to see me recreate next, which of these recreations were your favorites. Are you gonna go make your own palette now too? I always love to hear what you think about things, so make sure to leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Let's try that again, because it all was weird. It was all weird, top to bottom. That feels like longer than a month ago, but a lot of stuff happened in that month. A lot of stuff. I moved. Moving's a big thing. If you've ever moved, you know what I'm talking about. It's a lot. I feel like I'll never truly be unpacked, although I will be. It's just, it takes a while. And I have a 7-year-old, so it feels like new messes are going on top of the existing moving messes. It's just, you know, it's a challenge. But here I am, just being really shiny. That's how I'll get through it. Maggie can't be bothered. She's just asleep. Hold on, I'm gonna take a picture and I'll insert the picture. What I can see, because there's like a little corner in my office. Hold on. And she has her head partway under the curtains. A dog's life. Anyway, video making. That's what I'm here to do. Not staring at my dog. Absolutely not. So shiny. She's the shiniest lady. I know that my cheek color looks very subtle, and that's because my blush is actually just a dark pink highlighter, and then I have light pink highlighter on top, so it's really just a lot of shimmery powder, and I love it. I'm living my best life with as many highlighters and shiny things on my face as I can possibly manage. Thank you. That's the way I'll be living from now on. If you just heard a weird sound, it's because I have a 7-year-old son and he's weird. 7-year-olds are weird. They're kind of fun though. He asked me the other day if we could make chocolate covered bacon and then bake it into a croissant, and I was like, yes. That's the best idea I've ever heard. So I'll let you know how that goes, because I think that'll be pretty fun. And you're welcome for that idea if you decide to go make that too, because I think it sounds awesome, and I'm pretty sure that my child is a maniacal genius. Anyway, I'm gonna go check on him now, making a bunch of weird noises in there. Yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out, thanks for being so cool, cute, awesome, adorable, and just fun to hang out with. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to watch this video that I made. It's really nice. I appreciate it. And I love your face, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye!